Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. It is your girl Kamara. If you are new here, like I just said, my name is Kamara. I am the creator for this channel, which is Candidly Kamara. Here you will get some family vlogs, lifestyle content, candid conversations, encouragement, you know, a lot of things, just anything pertaining to lifestyle, anything that kind of will help you in life. So today I'm just going to be doing a story time with you guys about how I had a hysterectomy. So this is something that I wanted to do during Vlogmas, but I kind of wanted to wait at the same time because I didn't want to get lost in the sauce in Vlogmas, because I know that when I had my hysterectomy, I was out there looking for videos that were like honest and transparent and things like that. And it was a little bit hard. You know, most of the people who were out there were people who had elected for hysterectomies. And for me, that was not the case. So if you want to hear more, just stay tuned. So like I said, I am 28 years old. I'll be 29 in March. And this past year in 2020, I ended up having to have an emergency hysterectomy. I'm sharing this story because I feel like a lot of people do not realize the impact that certain things have on your body and the things that can happen by way of them. When I say things, I'm talking about birth control. Now, I want to start off and tell you guys, I am not a licensed professional. I do not have a medical degree. This is all just my personal opinion and my personal experience. If you have things that you're concerned about, you should definitely go to your provider so that they can better educate you on their scope of things. But this is just my personal story. So in 2018, I gave birth to my son, and I decided that I wanted to, kind of delay the process before we had baby number 4. In the past, the only birth control that I had ever taken was pills. I never took any other type of birth control, no shots, no IUDs, nothing like that. The only things I ever took were birth control pills, the mini pill to be exact, because I was a breastfeeding mom and that was the only one that they allowed you to take while you were breastfeeding. So at that time, I had told them, they were like, oh, what do you want to do for birth control? This is that and the next. And I was just like, well, I'm not sure. I do know I want to have another child. I was like, but I don't really want something that, I'm forced to keep like for a long time. And I also didn't want anything that was going to cause me a lot of hormonal swings. So against my better judgment, my doctor told me to try Mirena. And I wish that I didn't do it. I wish I would have stuck to my guns. I wish I would have been like, no, I don't want to do that. I just want to take the mini pill like I've had been. But I didn't. And the reason that she recommended Mirena for me was because at the time I was having like heavier cycles. And before I had my son, I was having heavier cycles, and she was like, it could help like regulate my cycles or whatever. So I'm just like, okay, it's fine. I don't really want to have another child for at least another 2 years. So this should be okay, right? Well, within the first 3 months of me being on Mirena, what I know now is that it started to cause me a very heavy depression. I was extremely depressed. I was living in Japan at the time. I felt like I just could not come up above water. I was trying to get up. I'm usually a very active mother with my kids, and I was trying to get up and do things with them, and I just could not. And in my emotions, I had really just become very irrational. Like, I just could not process through things like I normally could, and that's just not me. So, I called my doctors. I was like, hey, I'm not feeling so good on this. And they were like, oh, well, you have to give it 3 months, give it time to like settle out or whatever like that. So I'm just like, okay, so now I got to keep this thing in for 3 months because my providers are telling me that I can't take it out. So I wish that I would have known to advocate for myself better, but it's your doctor. So you're thinking, oh, I can trust these doctors. They have my best interest at heart. Sometimes in the military sector, you're just a number. Sometimes there are doctors out there that are very serious about what they do, but then there are some that just see you because that's their job, and they don't really take the time to educate themselves on you, your body, your genetics. They just don't. So nevertheless, I kept the Mirena in. I actually ended up keeping the Mirena in for a year because I left from Japan and came home to the US with our family to get help with the kids. And so while I was home, I just noticed like I was really struggling to get up in the morning. Like I could not get out of bed like before 2 o'clock. And if it wasn't for my brother being here, I honest to God don't know what I would have done. Like my brother would help me. Like, when my kids would get up, he would take them to the table. I would tell them what to make for breakfast. But y'all, I could not make myself get up. And prior to this experience, I had heard people talk about depression and what depression does to them, but I had never experienced something like this. So when I heard it, I was like, what you mean you can't get out of bed? Like, no, y'all, it's for real. Like I could not get out the bed before 2 o'clock. And then when I was always tired, I was always lethargic. Like I just felt like I could not get a break. Like I never had been in a place where I would go to bed at night but still wake up like I haven't slept in days or weeks. Like it was crazy. It was so crazy. And so I had started calling around to doctors here in Georgia and asking if somebody would just remove my Mirena for me. And they were just like, oh, well, if we didn't place it, we don't really like to remove it, because that could be like malpractice or a lawsuit on us. God forbid something goes wrong. So mind you, during this time, I'm not having any cycles at all, okay? Any cycles at all. So I am like, well, how am I going to get this thing out? Like, am I going to go to the ER? Because, at the ER, they usually won't take them out either unless like you're going through something like extremely crazy in that moment. And that was not happening. So this is where I was just like, Lord, I need you. Like, I'm counting on you. I'm about to pray a real serious prayer. And I found myself praying. I was like, God, I can't find a doctor to take this Mirena out. And I don't want it in my body anymore. I want it out. And by this time, my mother-in-law, my mom, like they had already told me, they was like, you need to get that thing out. Like, it's not doing well for you. You need to get it out. You need to find somebody to get it out. And so because I couldn't find anybody to get it out, I was just like, okay, I'm going to just pray and I'm going to just ask God to dislodge it, like let it fall out. And I know to some people that might sound crazy, but I have crazy faith. And that's exactly what I did. I was like, God, let this thing fall out. I want it out of my body. And I believe it was like May 30th or May 31st of 2019. It fell out. Literally fell out. Went to the restroom, fell out. And I just was like, thank you, Jesus. I needed that thing out. Okay, so it falls out, you guys, and I'm like, great. Now my body is just going to go through the weaning process. I'm going to, get better. I'm going to get back to my regular life because I had also gained a lot of weight and I was training with a trainer 5 times a week and I was not losing any weight. And I was just like, this has got to be from this birth control because I've never struggled to lose weight like this, like ever. So, I just ended up deciding, like, I was like, I'm just gonna let my body wean it off. Y'all, what they call the Mirena crash is so real. I was in the most pain I have ever been in my entire life. Like, even compared to childbirth, this was the worst pain of my life. I was passing clots the size of freaking baseballs. It literally felt like I was giving birth with no epidural. I bled for 14 days. It was so traumatic. It was so traumatic. So I just kind of went through that for the 14 days. I had a lot of mood swings, a lot of bleeding, a lot of cramping, just a lot of pain. So, and I also noticed like my hair was falling out. My hair wasn't really growing like it normally does. My hair grows extremely fast. You can probably tell by my locks. I locked my hair in July. It's been 6 months and I can do this. Like, my hair grows extremely fast. So I was just like, okay, the crash is over. We're going to be all right. Y'all, that's not what happened. So then after that, my cycles are irregular. So I'm calling my doctors. They're like, oh, that's normal. You've been on Mirena for a year. It's normal for your cycles to be irregular. Just give it some time. So I'm giving it some time. So here I'm spotting one day nothing's happening. One day a whole lot of something is happening. And then there was just nothing for months. So we started to try for another baby. And when we started trying for another baby, I just started noticing like that my cycles would just, they weren't going away. Like, I would not have a cycle. And then when the next cycle came, it would last for weeks and weeks at a time. So slowly but surely, the bleeding started to increase. I was bleeding a lot more. I was starting to really feel like just really lethargic, really tired. Just like I could not get through the day. Like, I could not get through the day. I couldn't get out of bed. So I go to my doctors, go back to the Naval Hospital, and I go to my doctors. So they're like, okay, well, we're going to do this thing called trigger birth control, which is basically where you take 28 days of birth control in 7 days. So you was taking like 4 pills for 4 days, 3 pills for 3 days, 2 pills for 2 days, 1 pill for 1 day. And that's supposed to like stop your body from having a cycle, get it on track, and then you ovulate, whatever like that. So I'm like, okay, cool. If this is what we have to do, this is what we have to do. I just want to stop bleeding at this point. So we do that. It does not work, you guys. I'm still bleeding. If not, I'm bleeding even more than I had before, because now my body has all these hormones in them, and it's just not working. So, sorry. So, I'm just like, okay, what's next? You know? So they're like, oh, we can give you a depot shot. I'm like, no, I ain't doing that. I was like, the only birth control options that I was willing to try was that pill. I was like, I'm not doing any other birth control. And so they were just like, okay, well, the next thing is for us to go in and do ultrasound, you know, and just see, you know, what's possibly going on, like, you know, what's producing what, how much is the blood flow, blah, blah, blah. So they send me down to radiology. I get a ultrasound, and it comes back that, you know, my body is just increasingly producing blood and it's not stopping. So they're like, we're going to go in and we're going to shave your uterine lining. So I went in for surgery. They shaved my uterine lining down. They were just like, oh, you know, when you are on IUDs, it can cause your uterine lining to become extremely thick. And that's pretty much what happened to you. But we've shaved it down, so now your cycle should be normal. So I'm like, okay, cool. They was like, you might not have a cycle for like a month or two because, you know, we did this surgery, but it's okay. Again, I'm like, okay, cool. We're fine. 2 months go by. I start bleeding again. At this point, I am bleeding so much that I'm having to wake up in the middle of the night. I'm having to take like multiple showers. Like, it just was really, really getting bad. And I started to see like my skin color was changing, like where I have natural highlight in my face. All of that was gone. Like, my skin was so dark and pale and gray. Like, I just knew that my body was losing way too much blood. So I go into the hospital on a Thursday and I tell them, I've been bleeding for 3 months now, you know, and y'all keep telling me that I'm just supposed to let my body regulate, but it's not regulating. It's been 3 months and I feel sick. I'm not okay. So they run my hemoglobin. On that day, my hemoglobin was a 7. 2 days later, I tried to get up out of bed and I was like breathing extremely heavy. Like, I could not catch my breath. So just for point of reference, my bed would be like these double doors right here. My bathroom in my master bedroom would be this door right here. When I tell y'all I was so winded, like I felt like I had ran a marathon. I could not get to the bathroom. So I go over there, I get there, I use the restroom, and I tell my husband, I'm like, something is wrong. Like, something is very, very wrong. I was like, I feel like I'm out of my body. I just feel like I'm gonna collapse at any moment. Something is wrong. I could not put my clothes on, anything. So he gets me dressed, he puts me in the car, he rushes me to the emergency room, and he sends me, I go in by myself because we have 3 children. And at this time, I want to say it was like little inklings of COVID happening. So it was just like, let's just be careful. They'll stay in the car. I'll go in by myself. So I go in by myself. This is 2 days after I was already in the ER. I go in by myself. My hemoglobin had gone from a 7 to a 4, which is critically low, and it's extremely dangerous. So I go and they're like, yeah, your hemoglobin is terribly low. We're going to have to keep you. We're about to put you on the oxygen machine. They start putting these like stickies all over my chest to check my breathing, because like I told y'all, I felt like I could not breathe. And so they, you know, they do that, and as soon as they walk out the curtain, the machine starts like alarming as if I'm not breathing, and they come rushing back in the curtain, and I'm looking at them and they're looking at me, and they're just like, okay, well, maybe like the probes or whatever are not like, you know, in the right spot. But I could feel my breathing like being extremely shallow. So they call back up to my doctor, who is on call on that day, and they're just like, you know, Kamara is back. She, her hemoglobin is critically low. We cannot send her home. She needs to be admitted to the hospital. So they admit me to the hospital, and I end up being in the hospital for 5 days. So the part that I skipped is between the shaving of my uterine lining and me being admitted to the hospital this time, I had been in the hospital 3 times for 2 days each time getting DNCs, because they kept telling me if I got a DNC, then I would stop bleeding. Well, 3 DNCs did not work. And so now this is where we are now. I'm at the place, and I'm at the hospital, and I am literally, they're telling me that I could go into shock at any moment and that I'm at risk of dying. So imagine having to call your husband who's in the car and tell him that they're telling you like that you're not, like you're really not well, you're not leaving the hospital, and it's going to be a bit of a stay. So I just told him, I was like, you know, just take the kids home. It's okay. I'm going to be okay. So I'm calling my mom. I'm calling my mother-in-law. I'm just like, you know, can somebody pray with me? Can somebody just stay on the phone with me? Because I'm scared. I'm really scared at this point, because I know there's something wrong, which is why I got to the hospital. But like it being confirmed by the doctors really, really, really scared me. So, yeah, so I'm downstairs. They're like, okay, we're going to start running fluids. You know, they're giving me, I have like an IV in both of my arms. And then they're like, we're going to start running fluids, and we're going to start running a blood transfusion, because if we don't transfuse you now, there's a chance that we will lose you. So I'm just like, it's just so many things happening. It's so many people. I'm still in the little bay in the ER. I'm not even upstairs in a room yet. This is all happening in the bay in the ER. So I'm just like, you know, I'm praying in my, I'm just like, God, you like, please don't let this be the way that, you know, I leave this earth. Like, God, please keep me, you know, please cover me, you know, just let them help me, let them find, you know, whatever is going on with me. Because at this point, I'm just like, I don't know what else to do. I don't know what else to do. I've tried everything, and I was fighting because I did want to have another child. And so I wasn't ready to relinquish that right of carrying children. I just was not in that place yet. So I just, you know, I'm watching everything go on, and even to this day, like it's not a blur to me, but it's still very emotional for me, because I just can't believe that it happened, because I had asked for help so many times. But I get admitted to the hospital. I end up having to have 6 blood transfusions while I'm in the hospital. I end up staying in the hospital a little over a week and a half, I believe. I did not tell any of my family that I was in the hospital besides my mother and my mother-in-law and my prayer warrior sisters, because I just didn't want to be overwhelmed by being there. And it was already so scary for me. I felt like if I called on too many people, or too many people started to call me, it just started to make me extremely anxious. So I was keeping my phone conversations strictly with my prayer team, with my mom, and with my mother-in-law. And then they were going and relaying the information to my family, and then telling my family, like, you know, give her space. Please don't, you know, overwhelm her with phone calls. Just let her, you know, get better. Let her heal, let her rest. So I got the 6 blood transfusions. I had to get the blood transfusions just to qualify for them to even think about doing any kind of surgery. I was so sick at that time that even after the 6 blood transfusions, they labeled me unstable for surgery, to be able to get a hysterectomy that day. So they gave me another DNC to try to stop the bleeding. And then they kept me there to watch, you know, how I was doing. But it was evident that the DNCs were not working, because I was still having active bleeding. I was still bleeding very bright red blood, versus like, you know, when you have a cycle, it will be dark red. And that was not what was happening. I was still very actively bleeding even after my surgery. So I ended up getting another blood transfusion after surgery. And I just remember waking up and just being in excruciating pain. Like my body was so tired, because while this video may only be like 20 minutes, this was going on for months. My friend Kat can tell you, she'll probably be in the comments of this video, but she can tell you this was going on for months. I was calling her, texting her. I was crying, like, because she was the closest one to me in time zone, and we are really good friends. And I would just be telling her, like, I feel like I'm going to lose it. I feel like I'm going to give up. Like, I don't know how I can keep going, how I could live like this. This is too much for me. I'm overwhelmed. I can't do it. And I just thank God for the people that surrounded themselves around me during that time to pray with me. And so I was able to get out of the hospital. I stayed home for about, they let me stay home for about 2 months, but I was still having to come in every week and have my blood tested to make sure that I was not losing too much blood, and to make sure that I was going to be able to have the hysterectomy that we had scheduled. But what ended up happening was the scheduled hysterectomy did not go as planned because I started bleeding again, and we ended up having to do it emergently. It took a lot for me to get to a place where I could even say okay to the hysterectomy, because even though I knew it was something I needed to do so I could be better, I was still so distraught, because here I was doing everything that I could do, and yet I was about to lose my right to carry children. And what we'll have to get into another video is like the grief behind a hysterectomy, especially when you don't elect for one, when you are forced to make a decision between your life or the ability to carry more lives, which you can't do if you're not alive. It's a really hard reality to sit with, especially when you are 20. At the time, I was freshly 28. I had my hysterectomy 15 days after my 28th birthday. And it was so overwhelming. It was so overwhelming because I just knew in my heart that I wanted to carry another child. And I knew that once they took me in, when I came out, I was not going to be able to have any more children. And then I think what made it so bad was that I had to have my surgery by myself. My husband had to drop me off at the front door of the hospital. And my nurse came out and got me, because this is in the middle of COVID. So they're not letting, children into the hospital. And because we were living overseas and nobody could fly to me due to COVID, I had to be dropped off with the nurse, and then I went and had my hysterectomy. And I thank God for that nurse, because she told me, she was like, I'm going to be the face you see when you go to sleep. She said, I'm going to be the face you see when you wake up. You don't worry. Like, I'm going to be there for you. I'm going to take care of you. You don't worry. I'm an advocate for you. Don't worry. And she was so kind to me. She was so kind to me. And while I was awaiting the surgeons to come and get me to roll me back for surgery, there was a man next to me about to have surgery on his leg, and his wife was there. And she looked around and she was just like, excuse me. She was like, I don't mean to be in your business. She was like, but are you here by yourself? And I was like, yes. I said, because I have 3 children. I don't have a babysitter, and their dad had to be home with them. And she was like, well, if you don't mind, they're already rolling my husband back to surgery. I'll sit with you until they come to get you. And this lady sat with me, and she prayed with me, and she was there along with my nurse while I was waiting to go get my hysterectomy. So I ended up going into surgery. And I had peace. I had finally just given it to God. I was like, God, I know you knew how much it's meant to me, but I know that your plan has to be better. And obviously you still have more work for me to do here on this earth. That's why we had to make this decision. I had to do something to make sure that I had life and breath in my body. And so I went in, I had my hysterectomy, I came out, and I was in terrible pain. Hysterectomies are no joke. They are definitely a major surgery. But it took me about 6 weeks to recover. I was home. I was on bed rest. I pretty much just sat in bed. I didn't have much of an appetite. I probably lost about 11 pounds in those 6 weeks, just because I just wasn't hungry. I wasn't doing much. I was really just laying and sleeping with the heating pads. They did my hysterectomy laparoscopically, vaginally, so I did not have to be cut. They just went internally, did the hysterectomy, and they took everything except for my ovaries. So I do still have my ovaries. And by way of that, they diagnosed me with PCOS. So it's like, yeah, I gave up my uterus, but I still have the ovaries, which also still affects the fact that I have PCOS, which I talked about in a previous video. So if you haven't seen it, I'll try to link it up below. But we're having PCOS, so I still have symptoms from PCOS. But I know now that as Black women in America, in the healthcare field, we have to advocate for ourselves twice as much as other people do. I was in plenty of groups with military spouses who were saying, oh, I hate my Mirena, and they were going to the doctor, and the doctors were taking them out. And that wasn't my experience. I didn't know that I would have to go so hard for myself in order to get the best health care that I needed. So if it's anything that this taught me, was to have a plan, to educate myself, and not to go solely off of what other people told me, but to actually research it, like, research it myself and speak up for myself and find doctors that wanted to advocate for me. So in the letter, they were saying that the things that were recommended to me to help me stop bleeding was actually not okay. I should not have been given that course of action as far as all the birth control they pumped into my body. They were saying that that was absolutely not the plan of action that they should have took after the first round did not work, that the hysterectomy should have been on the table from then. What they did to me leading up to that hysterectomy has actually affected me even after having the hysterectomy. At this point, I do struggle very heavily to lose weight. I could eat nothing for 5 days and still barely lose any weight. So now I'm actually being considered for a surgery that I don't even qualify for, but because medically my body is not burning, my metabolism does not work like it should, I'm kind of forced to look into this avenue to getting the weight off. And honestly, it's something that I want to do because I'm very uncomfortable. I've never been this size before. I gained a lot of weight and I gained it fast. And that's just not good for your body. It's just not good for your body. And it just affects my self-confidence and, my ability to be there for my children. So I'm actually still navigating through these pieces of it. But I wholeheartedly just wanted to more so educate people with this video that you definitely have to speak up for yourself. Don't just go with the first thing that is offered to you. Do your research, stick to your guns. If something don't feel right in your gut, don't move from it. Just don't, because I just wish that I had stuck to what I was saying from the very beginning. But God's plan is perfect, and he knew this was going to happen, and he's going to keep me even through this. So yeah, that's the story of me getting a hysterectomy. I know some of y'all asked when I spoke about PCOS on my other video. I got some DMs about talking about getting my hysterectomy, and that is why I ended up having a hysterectomy. It was not just like I woke up, it was like, okay, I'm done having kids, I want to have a hysterectomy. No, that's definitely not what happened. This is what happened. So in the next video, it is my plan to go into the aftermath of the hysterectomy that people don't talk about, because honestly, there was so much more that came after that, mentally and emotionally, that I was not prepared for. I wish that somebody would have told me after my hysterectomy, being that mine was so traumatic, that I should enroll, I should get in counseling. Nobody told me that I would go through grief. I still go through grief present day. There are still some days where I will see somebody pregnant, or I'll see my friends who I love to death and I support them wholeheartedly in their pregnancy. I tell them all the time, you don't have to be scared to tell me that you're pregnant. It's nothing like that. It's not like I'm not happy for them, because I'm so happy for them. But it's a lot that I didn't realize I was going to deal with. I didn't know I was going to be sad, about not being able to carry a child even after the surgery was over. That is still something that I do deal with. There are times where I watch my kids run around, or even raising my son, because he's my youngest. Raising my son, it hasn't been hard, but there are times where I get very emotional while I'm doing things with him, or when he's hitting certain milestones, I get extremely emotional, because I'm like, wow, this was my last time to go through these milestones with one of my children. And I'm very grateful, because I understand there are people out there who have had hysterectomies before they were even able to have children. So I want to be clear that I am extremely grateful for God allowing me to carry 3 kids. I do not in any way, shape, or form take that lightly, because I am so grateful. It's just the sting that comes along with having to make a decision before you're ready. Sometimes you have to do things and you're not ready to do them. And that was what this was for me. I just was not ready. And because I had no other choice, it really brought about some depression and some grief dealing with it. So I hope to have another candid conversation with you guys about going through grief, not just necessarily because of the hysterectomy, but just how to deal with grief, because this all happened at a time where I just knew that I would never face some of these things, and that's just pure ignorance. But being that I'm a psychology major, I did graduate this past year with my bachelor's in psychology, and I'm going to get my master's in marriage and family therapy. Like, I guess I never thought that I would go through some of these things, but I guess it qualified me even more to be in my job field and be able to help people like I want to very soon. But I was literally studying about grief and depression, and then boom, here I am struggling with grief and depression behind so much happening. So even in the midst, there was a pandemic going on in 2020, and I was going through something extremely traumatic. I was finishing my degree, and I was going through grief and depression, and it was hard. It was really hard. I'm doing better now, but I still have my days. So I definitely do want to talk to y'all more about grief and depression, but we'll save that for another video, because I'm sure this video is going to be very, very long. So if you guys enjoyed this type of content, I really do hope you guys will like this video, comment, and subscribe. Share this video with somebody. Tell me about your experiences. If you have any questions about more of the technicalities of my hysterectomy, I would be more than willing to answer them. You can just drop them in the comments down below, or I have my email in the description box. But I just want to say thank you guys for supporting me so much, and I'm just looking forward to getting more into like my lifestyle content, moving away a little bit from the family stuff. I'm still gonna be doing family stuff because I'm a stay-at-home mom, but just getting into some things that really are about me. Like, my YouTube is really about me, and it's my baby. So I love you guys so much, and I'll catch you on the next one.